Hello and welcome, everyone. I know it's been a while. For those of you that don't know already, we are Kraken One Open. We are the podcast that combines a really abnormal amount of drinking with your Seattle Kraken, which, you know, we're now past the NHL All-Star break point. We've had a couple months off because it feels like the team has kind of had a couple months off almost. We're sitting here with 16 wins, 29 losses, and 4 overtime losses. Jameson, my man. Well, first, let me reintroduce anyone that's not familiar. We are at Kraken One Open on Twitter or Instagram. We hope you're already following us there. And if you're not, we're glad that you are joining us here for your introduction, because here we are, trying to get this podcast off, and we haven't done a very good job the last couple months, which mostly solely on me, your host Nick Cody, which I apologize. You can follow me at JustFollow61 to see more about that and why. And hey, Jameson, you go ahead and tell everybody what you've been doing in the meantime while I've been, kind of really dragging this podcast down in terms of recording.
I've been skating and watching this team drag their friggin' heels. It's been pretty difficult to be enthusiastic to get ourselves up and going again. I mean, it has been what, two months almost to the day at this point.
Yeah, and to familiarize anyone out there that doesn't already know, that number one, our co-host right there, living there in Chicago, but he is not a Blackhawks fan. He is a Capitals fan out there, Washington, D.C. resident, always rocking with the Capitals. And obviously this time, I love the fantastic headwear. You're looking over there like, a real tough guy like Khabib. I love it.
I had to compensate for the lack of actual adornment up top. So
fair enough. Well, anyone that's watched the show before already knows we're a little bit behind from our face-off, where we tell you what we're going to be drinking, what we're going to be cracking one open in this episode. Excuse you, Jameson. Glad you got that out of the way early.
Pardon,
but
sorry.
I've got a whole assortment here to get back into our podcast. Going with my new favorite, the Hop Valley Stash Pack, which our good friend Mike, if you followed on previous episodes, a guest, has made readily available for me at my most local Walgreens, which for a 12-pack, I'm not going to say it feels like I'm ripping Walgreens off to get that for $13.99. So just going to throw that out there. If you get it locally in your region, get after it. I've got that in a couple Rainiers, but Stash Pack, Hop Valley, fresh from Eugene, Oregon. Go Ducks. That's my favorite one. I'll be cracking open. What do you have going for us, Jameson? Is it your usual?
Yes, sir. Classic whiskey diet. It's been a while. Special shout out to Mike. I don't think I did that last time. He was very kind to me while I was out there, as were you. But special shout out to Mike as well. Cheers, mate.
Release the Kraken!
Yes, and at Raven Ducks on Twitter, as he is also known, is one of our best supporters. And another reason we're going to be sitting here talking about a one more game experience I got to have, because he had an extra ticket and I was able to go with him, which is awesome. Was able to see the January 15th game against the LA Kings. But before we delve in on that in our first period deep dive, this is our penalty box. And that's when we have to sit here and own up, and we have a lot of time to just own up for in general. A lot of Kraken losses that we sat here and we're like, do we do an episode tonight? No, I'm not feeling it. Yeah, do we do an episode tonight? No, I'm not feeling it. And we have a win and we're like, yeah, already drank too much. Not a good night to do a Kraken one open. So what we do for you now in this penalty box is I will go first and start with obviously the best penalty box beer you can find around Seattle. That's the old Rainier, or Rainer if you're Jameson and in that region in the Midwest. But yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and apologize, because here, as the host, creator of Kraken One Open, it's mostly been my fault, as many things I've been busy with in the past couple months, and my lack of attentiveness to the Kraken. Whoa, we're already set up for this to be a fantastic episode if I'm stuttering on words here. But penalty box goes to just the lack of our absence and lack of attentiveness to our fans, because you guys have been out there, you've been communicating with us, and we've been trying to be, there for you during this very, very hard inaugural season, and not like we expected to be when we first started this podcast. So we're going to get back to it. We've had a little bit of time off, but we're back on the wagon, baby. Let's go.
Gonna have to change the name of that beer to Matty Rainier's.
Well, hey. So what do you have for a penalty box? I know besides just being away from the game, what do you have in terms of what you've seen, like specifically with the team we could drink for in this penalty box? Because a reminder to you folks at home, the best way to enjoy this show is if you drink along with us. And every time we get into the penalty box ourselves, you just join us for a little bit of a sip. And especially anytime Jameson gets on his rants, those are great times to enjoy and indulge and crack one open with us. So anything you've caught within, specifically since our last episode in December until now that really sticks out to you that, grinds your gears?
I think my biggest thing to apologize to the general audience for is not only getting into cursing, but getting cursing and turning the game off just out of sheer frustration. So my individual game analysis is going to be a little shy here, because a lot of the time over the course of the past maybe month or so has been, I can't believe I'm actually spending my time watching this game. And it's very frustrating. And I know around just kind of the whole idea of being a Kraken fan is we want everything to be great. We're not ready for failure. This is to be expected, but it's a little weak as far as moving forward is concerned. That's something I want to touch on going into the latter parts of this episode. But for me, yeah, I'm guilty in that regard as well. Just saying, oh my God, I can't even watch this.
As we all are at some points, and that's our penalty box. I hope at home you drink for your sins right now. We'll get this out of our system. Let's go.
Release the Kraken!
Hey, so going into our first period, which is our deep dive, that's something I want to really emphasize is expectations. And we've talked about in this podcast in our very early episodes about where we should manage those expectations. That's something we questioned very, very early on. So right now, I don't think a lot of our mainstay fans, Kraken up north, that's mostly you, and Mike, I don't think anybody is out there really shocked about this, unless you were one of those people that probably was ahead of me in buying season tickets, that invested a lot, not just this year, but future years potentially, that is sitting here wondering about that product. And when they try and sell their tickets at a premium right now, if they aren't able to get that back, like I can only imagine what that's like for them. But again, we sat here and talked about how Vegas was an outlier and that we shouldn't expect Seattle to duplicate those things, especially the way we drafted, with not necessarily an emphasis on the offensive side of the puck.
Yeah, we're at a weird part of the season where being after the All-Star game, you have to kind of look at what you realistically have to look forward to.
Yeah.
And to me, it's what's the older group of guys that maybe we either traded for, I would say largely got out of the draft, that deserve to be looking at finishing out their careers on a more steady team, a more cup-worthy team potentially.
Yeah.
And it's probably a lot of guys that the general fan base would want to be keeping around. Guys like Gio,
Yeah.
Alexiak, Larson, Kalyankrik, even some like Jordan Eberle.
Yeah.
These are all big contracts where the guys are late 20s going into early 30s, depending, who it is. Even someone like Chris Drigger. I don't see Grubauer moving just because he has such a big contract at was it 5.9 a year. That's not the worst contract to move, considering there's guys like Carey Price that are making 10, but that's just outlandish.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
on that note, before we move on, like you have to wonder with you've sat there and we've texted about it. There's a lot of negative fan reaction, which isn't entirely deserving, but it's true. Gruby has not lived up quite to expectations. He's had fantastic games and times of moments and saves that you just sit there and you just you're amazed by, but also a lot of the blame has gone towards him because of obviously the amount of goals that have been given up.
I think he's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
I think he's gotten too much from Kraken fans as far as I don't think he's blameworthy in that regard.
Yeah.
I think, again, having watched him develop in Washington, I was sad to see him go.
Yeah.
I think Colorado did a great job of not only developing, but putting together a system that really let him flourish.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was very much in a similar situation where he was going to be very close to demanding a huge contract. Same way Braden Holtby was after the Capitals won the Cup in 2018.
Yeah.
So the way I look at it is that the Kraken are not structured to play the same game that he was accustomed to in Washington and Colorado.
Yeah.
That's the way I see it.
Yeah, it makes sense.
To expect him to be a number one goaltender when you're a bottom six team in the league, which it pains me to say, but statistically, that's what you are at this point. To expect him to put up those numbers or to just absolutely hoist the team on his back is beyond absurd.
Yeah.
So I don't think he deserves that much flack.
Yeah.
Could he be playing better? 100%.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to sit here and defend him wholeheartedly, but to expect numbers like he put up in Colorado or Washington is beyond absurd.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, you're sitting here with the defensive looks that he's had in multiple games, where with me, again, anybody that hasn't watched this podcast before, I barely know what I'm talking about hockey this season. Besides this season, there's been times he's been hung out to dry where you just sit there and you go, he's had a couple saves in those situations where it's a crowd pleaser. He's been put in that situation so many times. It feels like we're just like, of course there's going to be enough that pass through. And especially with the talent in the league right now, it's you can't leave your guys out there to dry that much. And it feels like because of our lack of offensive production, it happens more often than not.
That, and I mean, this goes back even, I remember sitting in Miami doing that quick episode saying, you guys got to watch the backdoor shots. You can't just let them walk around your entire offensive zone, or your defensive zone, their offensive zone, and expect him to just flash the glove and make magic happen. That's not how defense works.
Yeah.
He's not a brick wall as much as you want him to be. You have to enable him to make those saves. So that's very frustrating to watch and very frustrating to hear a lot of the fan base just put the blame on him, or even realistically Drieger, because I think Drieger's been great too.
Yeah. Yep. And even what we had to call Decord a couple times, especially
Yeah.
we had a couple games postponed, obviously. I mean, you can tell if you've been following this podcast and the team why we've had a couple episodes or a couple months off is because honestly, it's been so up and down that every time it's felt like there's something good to talk about, there's just as many negative things to talk about, which, frustrating, albeit, but I have to say again, I can't wait for you to come back out here. At the experience at Climate Pledge is just continuing to improve. There, January 15th for the Kings game, I was able to pick you up one of these flags, buddy. It's going to be coming your way pretty soon, but it was very, very fun to be there. Close game up early, and now I'm understanding they've been listening to a lot of the crowd demand and are making readily available, more affordable foods and beverages around the arena at certain spots. But that's been my only gripe so far with the in-game experience. And I know when you were there, you thought our views were really fantastic from the 100 level, but the double digit level, which is down in the bowl. Oh my God. That was so fantastic to view a game from, and all the sight lines, I think, in Climate Pledge Arena right now definitely are holding up that ticket price where it has been most steadily for most of the season. But if you can get in there at the right price right before the game, I gotta tell you, there's not a bad spot in the house. Just get in there, and whether Kraken win or lose, man, it's such a great experience, because I know even though we lost to the Kings 3-1, I was sitting there with Mike like every single moment, enjoying the hell out of it. And everything there. In fact, I got to finally try the Chicken Shack. Got to walk in, and what was great about it is you just basically decide it's like the Amazon Go stuff. You pick up what you want and you walk out of there. So the convenience level of all of it, I got a $16 chicken sandwich, just picked it up, walk out, once you scan in, and it was all good and done. As soon as I'm back in my seat, I was able to check the receipt for him, and I'm just amazed by the convenience and everything going on. At least if we are down there, right there with Arizona, at least everything they're offering in the amenities are 10 times what Arizona is going through right now. And we'll save that for period too. Nice tease, right?
Oh, good golly.
So, anyways, while we wrap up period one, reflecting on, my experience, and what do you wish that you could see, number one, from the team moving forward, and like what right before the trade deadline, and what do you think, like, do you remember from your experience back there on Halloween that you really want to see Climate Pledge Arena start to institute in terms of trying to get the fans more involved? Because that's the one thing I was like trying to sit there, be an educated hockey fan, not be the guy that gets up and moves in between, like during live hockey, which pisses me off so much. And I barely even know hockey like that, but I know from going to enough Silver Tips games and Winterhawks games, like, dude, if it's live hockey, why aren't you watching what's going on the ice? Anything could happen if you're moving to your seat right then and there. So that's my biggest complaint so far from your experience, and it's still maintained to January 15th, unfortunately. But from your experience, our experience on October 31st and until now, what from the team in that Climate Pledge Arena experience would you like to see improve?
I mean, the experience itself was fantastic. I don't mean to short set that at all. I think it's a little difficult to hold like what I consider to be a normal standard, just given that it's the inaugural season. People are just trying to understand the game, trying to just support their local team. I don't think that anything that I would consider, having grown up on ponds and skating by the time I was 2, and I don't think that's fair. In that regard, I don't think my personal opinion is very strong because I can gripe here as much as I want, but it wouldn't be fair and it wouldn't be inviting. It wouldn't be welcoming to the new fans. I say, come on out, try to learn one thing as you go. Even if it's just why was there a whistle there? Or as you asked me, why is that light on? And it was a commercial timeout. Little stuff like that. I don't have too high of expectations for people that are just trying to acclimate themselves with the game, with the team. By all means, take your time, have fun with it. That's what it's all about. Um, as far as the team is concerned, that's where I have a couple opinions. Um, going that far, as far as the trade deadline is concerned, just glancing over a couple of ideas really fast. They're going to be sellers.
Yep.
Just
As they
period
should
end of
be.
story.
Yeah.
Yes. I wouldn't be surprised to see them dealing with Colorado, Minnesota. St. Louis might be a little bit. There is a journalist with the Athletic named, I forgive me if I'm mispronouncing this, Saad Yusuf,
Hmm.
who
Sounds
has
pretty
said,
accurate.
who has said that he's seen at least one, if not two, scouts in Dallas against the Predators, the Jets, and the Avalanche in the past week. So that's something to keep in mind. Other teams to be doing business with: Calgary, Vegas, even Washington. Hell, I mean, there's a lot of stuff given the right price that they can work with, which will set them up for a better year next year than what we're seeing right now. For a really good example, just very quickly, Montreal and Calgary just had a very interesting trade where Montreal needs the sickest rebuilding of honestly almost any team that I've seen over the course of the past maybe 10 years, 15 years.
Damn.
So they traded Tyler Toffoli for Mila Hammond, Tyler Pitlick, conditional first round pick, and a fifth round pick in 2023.
Damn.
Tyler Toffoli, his first game as a Flame in Calgary, scored a goal. So it wouldn't surprise me if someone like Donskoy or like Jan Kruk or even Yanni Gord wanted to go somewhere and they got a huge return. Mm-hmm. That would not surprise me whatsoever.
Yep.
Like I said, I just wanted to touch on the expectations there really quickly because I know we're on a little bit of a time budget here, but just as far as the expectations are concerned, I wouldn't go crazy, but that's kind of in the realm of possibilities, if not purebred expectations.
Yeah, for sure. And as we round out our deep dive in our first period, just to get, especially if you're catching up on this podcast and you're going back listening through old episodes, we just came off a Valentine's Day loss to the Maple Leafs, which I watched on recording yesterday, which, pretty damn tough. Tomorrow we have a game against the Jets, which hopefully we can turn things around. But man, when I say tomorrow, this is probably when this releases. But we're gonna get this out Friday or Thursday morning before we play the Jets at 5 Pacific time. And hopefully, man, it would just be good to see progress. Regardless of who gets out there and who ends up scoring the goals. It's been really, really frustrating to see, especially once Tanev got hurt, kind of the inconsistencies of like roles on the team and guys having to almost overextend themselves in certain roles when you can tell like they're meant for this certain role. You know what? I think the only guy that's really, I mean, Eberle getting on the, getting the All-Star votes. He's obviously, like leading goal scorer for most of the season. It makes sense, but it's felt like role players for the rest of the season has been iffy. And every time, like guys, especially defensemen that we thought when we talk about previous episodes, were going to step up big for us, it's really felt like they've let us down. And that's hard for me to say with not that much knowledge, but I just expected more, I guess, out of a lot of our guys. And, that starts right there with Gio and Alexiak.
And so much of that, at least as far as I've seen from fan critiques, just sort of community feedback, has been throwing it at Hextall.
Yeah.
I don't think it's time to call for his head yet.
No. Yeah, I agree.
Feel like that's way too easy. Inaugural season with a bunch of guys that have never played together before. I'm 70-30 on the whole. Was it a good draft? I have been persuaded in certain situations saying that's probably not who you should have taken. I mean, taking Dunn over Tarasenko, or just little stuff like that. But moving forward, the long-term injury reserve with Tanev, with Jaden Schwartz, between the two of them, they're making $9 million through the cap. And then I suppose you have Kuhlman, who's making $725K, which is not really something to even include. Really, that's a tiny contract, and that's not his fault.
No.
It's just there's so many big contracts where you would expect more from a guy like Adam Larson.
Yeah. And and I just feel like the team right now is just like to put everything on Hackstall is to be completely ignorant to the rest of the league, I think. And you look at the shifting of the league and right now, and look at what Vegas is trying to do. Trying to not only bring in like they're trying to get Fleury back right now. Like that's what's crazy.
There's no way that's gonna happen.
We'll see.
I'm gonna put nope because they just put Stone on long term, which is a $9 million contract.
I missed that. But again, the talks I had seen, at least around here, and again, you have to keep in mind the Seattle NHL community is not quite plugged in yet. It was sounding for a minute there like they're trying to lure Fleury back, and we'll see if it happens. Then I will come back and anyways, this is a perfect segment to transition into what we call the second period, which we go around the league and we say,
release the Kraken!
But we do it with all the teams around the league, and we talk about, especially before the trade deadline, what could happen and all the potential for the Kraken moving forward. Good for first period, though, mate. We don't have intermissions here for those of you that are new. And because if we did, it'd be more editing for me, and actually probably a better ultimate product as our podcast if we had a little break in here. But hell, actually might think about that moving forward. Shit. But in the meantime, one thing I'd love to talk about immediately, and we kind of touched on it in the first period, is how about those Arizona Coyotes? And we've talked about it previously on the podcast, and them trying to find a home and where that's going to end up being. Well, what's the Jameson, give them the most recent update.
All right. Well, so out in Glendale, just to recoup a little bit for anybody who wasn't following already. Um, they had owed the city several $1 million in taxes or rent or whatever, so they basically just told them to screw off because they've been in the bottom two of attendance of ticket sales since 1996 when they moved there.
I thought you were going to say bottom 2 records, and I'm like, that's us and them.
No. I mean, back in the days of Roenick and Kachuk and stuff like that, they actually have not had the worst record. I mean, now, yeah, sure. But late 90s, early 2000s, they weren't something just to throw in the bin. It's just not a good market.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening was Glendale didn't want them to go back to the arena.
Mm-hmm.
So they wanted to move to Tempe. They have money to build an arena there. City of Tempe basically told them, so now they're playing at the multi-purpose arena.
Wait, for those of you that are just listening audibly right now, that was an up your sign from Jameson.
Yes.
Go on.
Yes,
We do have our only audio listeners that don't want to look at our fucking faces. So
it's too early to start cursing. All right. We're gonna save that for Evander Kane later. Not all joking aside, they will be playing at the Arizona State University multipurpose arena, which they're committing, I forget however many millions of dollars to convert to a NHL properly ready arena.
Yeah.
That being said, it's a 5,000 person capacity arena.
Silliness. Just silliness.
Which, okay, so the reason that's kind of weird, and by kind of weird, I mean unfair to quite literally every other team in the league, is that all the teams are on a revenue sharing program. So their full capacity is about 10,000 less than the second lowest capacity in the league.
Jeez.
So it's a really, really frustrating situation for the league. And keep in mind that the Coyotes themselves moving in 96 were kind of the Sun Belt brainchild of Gary Bettman, the commissioner there.
Yep.
So he, at one point, the NHL owned that team because it wasn't a logistically sound investment for quite literally anybody.
Yeah, comparably for fans out there that aren't huge in the NHL, what happened to the New Orleans Hornets in the NBA for a while, when the league essentially has to take over because no ownership at that point really wants to take on that for the price at that time. So for sure, makes sense. And even sitting here now, like ownership groups are in a lot different position than they were then. And obviously that's why, Seattle has an ownership group, Jerry Bruckheimer, multiple big names are definitely involved in that here in Seattle, but it's not one major owner. That's huge.
Not only that, but also they're trying to focus on staying in Arizona.
Yep.
The ownership group itself has specifically said we want to stay here, even though it's a crappy market. Again, they were playing in Glendale. They're not playing in Phoenix. Whether or not moving to Phoenix over Glendale would have any significant mathematical impact
long term, yeah.
I'm not the guy to say. Honestly, at this point, I say screw them, send them to Quebec or Houston.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, Houston's a big market, not a particularly hockey friendly market, but it's a big market.
Sure.
So I mean, it would be easier to do Houston than or Kansas City. There's a lot of ideas there. Um, the idea is that the agreement that they've signed is for the next 3 years they'll be playing at ASU in that 5,000 person capacity rink,
Yep.
multi-purpose arena, however,
Yeah.
with the option of a fourth year.
Interesting.
To me, if they don't have a better idea by the end of next season,
Yeah, they're fucked.
it's an absolute waste.
Yeah. Fuck.
I mean, I guess it's better than just defaulting and just getting rid of the team and having a bunch of. I mean, Phil Kessel still plays on that team, dude's a great hockey player. There's a lot of great hockey players that play for Arizona.
I mean, look at it this way. February 9th, last Wednesday, we lost their asses 5-2, dude. Like, I was sitting there and I texted you after the game because I missed it. And it's one of the few on the DVR that I didn't watch some portion of and just deleted. And I texted you and was just like, bro, where are we at right now? Like, what? How do we look? And then I'd look at the standings and that's around the league.
I watched about, it was less than 10 minutes, maybe 5 to 7 minutes of the game. And I remember texting you just being like, well, that's embarrassing.
Yep, that's exactly what you said. I'll pull it up right now. Go ahead. Keep going. I'll get it word for word.
It was just really sickening because for what you would expect of a great market like Seattle versus a team that has never been able to fill a stadium and is playing to the best of my knowledge, and I could be wrong, don't quote me on this, the first time an NHL team has played in a university-sized arena regularly. That's embarrassing. Not and that's not even to say it's embarrassing for Seattle. It's embarrassing that they can't figure out a place for this team to move from Arizona to go someplace real that actually appreciates the game of hockey on the highest caliber that it possibly can be played.
Well, on that note, I would love to point out as we wrap up our second period that I tried to look back to February 9th, what we were talking about that time on the Wednesday. And it was actually rather that Ben Affleck was nominated for a Razzie for his role in Last Duel, and that was more important to our text conversation at the time than anything going on with the Kraken, which in itself is an indictment of the program. Like, go ahead.
Okay, not only was that the topic of the conversation, but the fact that neither of us had seen it and had no opinion was more important.
That, and we both had that much more to say that day. Then we lost to fucking Arizona. I'll choose you for that, and I will say in truest of forms,
release the Kraken!
Skål.
Spilling all over the place.
So
we go into our third period, which is usually our fan outreach, which, hit or miss at this point. And that's on us, obviously, when you spend this much time off. So right now, we kind of just get to freestyle and do whatever the hell we want, right, Jameson?
I mean, what else is there to do, realistically?
Within reason. But what I would love to point out, and anyone that's still hanging in there with us, if you haven't already followed, at Just Follow 61 or at Kraken One Open, man, you're missing out, because Jameson, you've actually taken over more of that Twitter role on the Kraken One Open account than I have. And every time I hop in to check out what's been going on there, I'm like, oh shit, Jameson's really been up in there hyping it with the fan base.
I've been goofing off a little bit. Usually I try to keep it lighthearted, just try to make a joke here or there. Just like, holy crap, do we win a game? Do we?
Well, no, honestly, though, I've noticed a couple times you've been out there having great conversations. What are a couple of the things that at least you are taking, like, in retrospect, obviously, from the past couple of weeks where our podcast has been off, that you've been able to have that conversation with our fans one-on-one instead of like having it just be this one-way kind of thing like this podcast?
It's been interesting because I've mostly been trying to interact with just general Kraken fans. Just anybody that says, "Hey, I'm from Seattle," or "Hey, I'm following the league," or anything like that. It's honestly, it's been a very weak effort, but a little bit.
I've seen you out there during some games chopping it up.
Just trying to get something to talk about.
Sure.
Get a little bit of banner going. I've posted a little bit about Notorious around the league stuff, or like milestones that have been coming up, or stuff like that. Like Henrik Zetterberg had his number retired. Zubov had his number retired. Just stuff like that. Actually, yesterday was Yarmir Yager's 50th birthday. That's a little one that I didn't post about, but I'll say it here. Just hockey appreciative stuff.
Hell yeah, man.
Trying to get people involved on a very lazy, loose basis.
For sure. And on that lazy and loose basis, what have you caught in the, I mean, this is a weird period of time for hockey fans, and you Seattle Kraken fans that aren't aware of it, the NHL All-Star game, especially the way they tried to line it up with the Olympics this year, even though obviously with certain things it didn't quite work out how they had planned. There's a really dead period right now of NHL information and stuff, but to be honest, like right now, all fans are kind of like sitting back, looking at the trades, everything that happens from the NHL All-Star game, and really trying to sit back and, I mean, fans that are in it, trying to plan what this Stanley Cup playoffs are going to look like. For you right now, what do you see as the top 3 or 4 teams that you think have a chance at getting the Stanley Cup this year?
Okay, top 3 or 4.
Yeah, we had to get the conversation interesting and NHL relevant at some point, right?
I'm gonna, if I had to go Cup Finals right now, I'm going Carolina versus Colorado.
Ooh, okay, I like it. Both teams. Well, I remember when we got a win against Carolina at Carolina, the peak of my Kraken hype. Honestly, at the time they were the best team in the league. I still remember to this day, and I hope that isn't the peak of where this Kraken hype goes, because it could be at this point, trajectory wise.
Okay, so I wouldn't look at it that way.
Thank you. Please help me dig myself out of this ditch, Jameson.
There's going to be a lot of movement because, again, trade deadline's the 21st of March.
Yep.
A lot of stuff that's going to be happening. Like I said, Kraken are going to be losing some players, probably Vancouver. I mean, there's going to be a lot of movement of teams trying to either make the playoffs or just get rid of whoever they can. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Rangers make a push. I mean, Pittsburgh's the best team in the East right now, I think. What is it? Well, they're down 1 point, whatever. I mean, Florida. If it was completely up to me, I would like to see Florida over Tampa Bay.
Mm-hmm.
That's just me personally. It hurts to see Washington just fighting for a wild card. If they make the playoffs, they're going to be a first round exit. As a Washington, your fan, you're just kind of expecting that. That's just
in the Pacific Division, as we're sitting here and we've talked about with Gio, the Golden Knights and Flames being right there, and with the addition the Golden Knights are making right now, do you put, if you're an honest to God Seattle fan, do you really want Gio right now to go back while Calgary is in their perfect position? Because honestly, I'm leading you on with the question. I'm a bad host for that. But I'm sitting here like, I'm sorry for anybody that bought a Gio jersey. I'm sorry for anybody that bought in. But as our captain, oh my God, look at Calgary right now. Look at the positioning of both our teams. And if you really feel bad about it, you're not an honest hockey fan. You look honestly at yourself, because sitting here all buying into the Kraken hockey, Seattle hockey, and my buddy here, Jameson, and Kraken won't open as a whole. Gio, I just want the best for him as a hockey player. And you sit there and you watch all professional sports, and someone that understands, having taken my attempt up there at the Canadian Football League, man, there's nothing like it. You got to support everybody in their dreams and putting them in the best position to live their dreams, dude. You're giving somebody's, something they've dreamed about, especially someone that's been a part of a program that long. If you could put them in a position, you could put them back there to be that last piece as a part of a Stanley Cup. What a chef's kiss. Send them off on that, dude. I'd be so happy for it. And it would make the Kraken program that much better. That would be a great story for us.
Yeah, and realistically, you have to have respect for a guy like that. I mean, he's 38 years old? Dude's been in the league for longer than half the kids that are coming up right now. Yeah. It's actually absurd.
Yep.
If you have any respect for the player and any respect for the game, you have to say this is not how
which to be honest, even you say that and I don't, I don't. My respect is not, and we have people clicking out right here and now. I don't have that level of respect. I hope to earn it. I hope to have it after enough of watching hockey live. But to be honest, I sit there and I'm like, no, okay, sometimes in these scenarios, I side with the league over the player. But this is someone beyond the organization, but beyond the league. I would love to see go back to Calgary if Calgary could win it or even get to the Cup this year. That would be great if they could get to the Stanley Cup playoffs, especially in my own bias. If they could do it over the Vegas Knights or the Oilers or the Kings, I'd be pretty happy about that.
Okay, so specifically with regard to Gio, and I'll just glance over this briefly. The difficult thing with him is he's making almost $9 million a year right now. I don't know off the top of my head what Calgary's cap availability is. So this is a grand assumption, but
fair.
If he were to go back to Calgary, I would assume that Seattle would have to retain a fraction of his salary. His salary, yeah.
His Calgary and Calgary. I love it.
Yeah. Sorry.
That's how you know. Hey, that's how our folks that have been tuned in this whole time, if you've been drinking along or not. That you're either wondering why we paused right now, or you totally were aware with that. You're like, why can't these guys just fucking keep it together a little bit longer?
Yeah, that's just relative enunciation, right?
Just cracking one open.
Yeah, as we happen and are. But yeah, so moving him back to Calgary, I think if it works out, I would love to see it happen with the success that Calgary has been working towards. It kind of actually goes back to how you mentioned Fleury going back to Las Vegas, which I very rudely interrupted you, but I wanted to interject just to make sure that realistically there was no incorrect information. Because with them putting Mark Stone on the long-term injured reserve, that's kind of the quote-unquote Kucherov rule at this point, which is kind of a joke coming off of Tampa Bay winning last year, where it didn't count towards the playoffs. Where tonight, Jack Eichel, who's making $10 million a year, or was it 10 or 9, whatever it was a huge contract.
Yeah.
He tonight's his first time playing for the Golden
Vegas.
Knights.
Yeah.
And Stone has had back issues, which when it was Kucherov, it was arguable whether or not it was legitimate. I'm not going to get into that, but there's really nothing the league can do to argue or negotiate the rules that are already set in place. So technically, Vegas could be playing $10 million over the cap once the playoffs come around. That being said, Fleury has a big contract, and I would be shocked to see him go back to Vegas. I do know he refused to go to Washington because Brian McClellan, the GM in Washington, was trying to figure out how to get him in there because they could really do for a actual starting goaltender.
Oh, and I wonder why you know that.
Release the Kraken!
I think that means we're right there. Third period?
Thought that was the third period, mate.
No, that's what I'm saying. We're done with the third period. So we are my bad. We are here our sudden death wrap up. And we need to wrap things. My bad. Again, my bad. To focus in on trying to get our sound bites in at the right time and getting the podcast within a reasonable time, because I'm sitting here looking like, we are completely out of our regular marks, which is great. I would love to keep an open format for our show. And if you'd like to join in on future episodes or future discussions, please reach out at Kraken One Open on Twitter, spelt out, on Instagram, Kraken one as a number and then open, but or on Facebook. Is we're honestly quietly we've gotten the most growth of just random people joining and like being interested, but
yeah.
I think that's a huge contribution from you going on the Twitter and the Facebook accounts, Jameson, and actually being a participant, whereas I've unfortunately not been that active. So as we go to our sudden death wrap up and talk about what we enjoyed about this episode and what we want to see in future episodes, Jameson, start us off. And what was one thing you're going to take away from this episode, and one thing you want to institute in future episodes, and especially our next episode, which I hope is sooner rather than later?
Well, okay, so for this one, for me, I would like to get like that foundation.
Yeah.
Everything that we've talked about with who might move, what to expect. We have a solid footprint, what we've already talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Come back next episode and just say, were we right? What has happened since then? If a total audible was called, why were we wrong? And what to expect moving forward. Have it be fluid, somewhat organic moving forward. That's what I really enjoyed.
Sure. And a lot of the fluidity is on us and our conversations, but how our fan base can interject and guide those conversations is so huge. Because it would be great if we just sat here, talked all day about what we were thinking about in the Kraken, but there are many things we're missing when we're watching, from TV or their live, especially. We'd want to hear from all the Kraken fans. And the biggest thing is moving forward. I like the more open the format, the better. I love the 3 periods, but again, it doesn't have to be set in any particular way. And I'd love to take 1 or 2 of those, make those interviews. So if you're a Kraken fan, you want to come on here and talk about, Crack One Open with us and just talk about your experience as a new Kraken fan, we'd love to do that because that's the kind of platform we want this to be, and just have it open to all Kraken fans because, we're not gatekeepers here. We want to educate the average Kraken fan like me, like going into those games from my first experience with you and until I went with Mike. I had a totally different experience of what to, know going in and when I was going to interrupt other fans' interaction with the game, which is hugely important if you're going to go to any NHL game or any hockey game in general. And, the more Kraken When Open can help educate you on those things, the better for all of us hockey fans and anybody out there that wants to see this program and this NHL franchise grow. So, hey, as always, I'm Nick Cody, your host. This is Jamison Edwards. You can find us at Kraken One Open, and we hope you cracked one open with us because I can already tell you, I had a great night tonight, and it always picks my spirits up to be drinking with my man Jamison and all our Kraken fans out there. So thanks, buddy, and
Release the Kraken!
until next time, keep tuned in, dial into all our socials, and stay tuned to us for our next podcast because it's going to be sooner rather than later for our last one. Have a great night, Jamison.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers, buddy.